Okay, in the 90%, which is self, Jung talks about what is called shadow. Now, I'm sure a lot of people don't even know this, but the shadow or the shadow self was called melanin. They're calling this the shadow. So this is not the same shadow self of melanin. This, even though melanin has been called your twin, the Ka has been called the melanin, which is just your spirit double. But in this particular case, this would represent the Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde syndrome. If anybody's seen the TV show Heroes, the girl would go to the mirror and then she would change in and out. That represents the shadow self. The shadow self exists in the real self, but it is formed by trauma. Yeah. Formed by trauma.
The hero's journey.
What Freud called this was repression. What Jung called it was the shadow self, the spiritual side that became your evil twin, your Mr. Hyde to you, Dr. Jekyll. Or remember when the first Spider-Man with the Green Goblin would go past the mirror and just hear these voices. That represents the oppressed you. Well, I'll give you an example. When you're a baby, I remember when I was a baby, I remember getting my diapers changed. That's how my memory goes. I remember the more I hit my toe, scrape my knee, and all the rest of that shit, the more careful I would start to become. Because these shocks started, while you need this, it's a form of protection. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You're protecting yourself this way. Now, on that context, you can say it's melanin because melanin also can be a protector as well. You get what I'm saying? Shit. The first thing is it protects you from the sun. But
for real.
So when you see trauma, your mama may be getting beat or your father may get, somebody, you actually forget it. The easiest way to do it is all those women who are in a psychiatry office that you see on TV, and then they talk, find out somebody was molesting them. You get what I'm saying?
Right.
It is so traumatic that you put it in your shadow self, but it does not go away. You are, that same woman is in that psychiatrist's office to find out why she cannot give fellatio to her man. Only to find out that some dirty bastard did something he wasn't supposed to do and shocked her. You get what I'm saying? So it's actually still, it hasn't gone away. It's still running your life as your evil twin. Still running your life as your evil twin. You just don't know why. I've often given this example. You get bit by a dog at 7, so traumatic, you repress it. It's in the shadow self. You hate dogs. You don't like dogs. You shake when you see dogs and don't know why. Because it's a part of the shadow self. Now, you got to remember these things as we move on, what they mean. Now, there's also, let me tell you, there's also a collective shock. Now, let's say you get bit by the dog, there's personal unconscious. Personal unconscious. Personally, I'm scared of dogs. Personally, you love them. There's a collective shock. Great example would be the Middle Passage or slavery. Collectively shocked. Of people who is scared of the white man. People who are scared of the white man. A collective repressive shock. You don't even know why. You start smiling and dancing in the presence of white people and don't even know why. Because collectively, as a race, we've been shocked. That's another example of how there's this repressive hate for these guys, which we cannot get past to get to the self. Now, understand, the shadow sits upon a greater realization. The greater realization is your conscious self. The shadow is the shocks that sit within the self. So most of us who still talking about the whitey and Mr. Whitey are still dealing with shadow pain, not consciousness. Not consciousness. You're still dealing with your hurt, your shadow self. And I'll throw in a sidebar to this, and I'm not going to give you niggas details, but Miss Blue is a mother template. when we first started doing the show, it was me and Blue would have our own personal conversation. I started tapping into so much of my shadow shit with my mother, it took me to a whole nother level personally.
Yeah, personally.
We're not talking consciously, personally. So Miss Blue is the ultimate fucking psychiatrist you niggas need to know. You get what I'm saying? If you got problems with your mother, you may want to book a regular chat and chill session before you get a reading from Miss Blue. Just a chat and chill with her. And boy, oh boy, you'll be on there talking about shit your mama did in 1972 that you ain't comfortable with. You ain't even know the shit was going down. So what was happening, and I've never told Blue to this very moment, that a lot of the shadow things, you're able to get them out and bring them to light. You get what I'm saying? They are there. You are a human. I don't give a fuck if you know how to walk on water, grow wings on your feet, and change your name to fucking Mercury. You get what I'm saying? Because you're having a human experience, this process is the same for everyone. You get what I'm saying? For everyone. And so the greatest position you'll be in if you understand these concepts and see where you're working on. So again, all of this white tea and all the rest of that stuff, all I'm seeing is a bunch of hurt people trying and not trying to deal with the shadow self. See, when I say, and nobody's really complained, there's a lot of people who understand it, we need to stop worrying about them because that's a way to release yourself from what you perceive to be their power. You get what I'm saying? And let me go ahead a little bit to show you what I'm talking about. You always see the white man when you hear some shit about he's a business exec, runs billion-dollar companies, but on the weekends he likes to get dominated and somebody put a big heel in his ass. You get what I'm saying? He likes to get whipped and pissed on. What does that mean? Well, that's his shadow self.
Right.
Perhaps his true self saying, I don't deserve to dominate the planet. My real self is telling me what I am. I like a red ball in my mouth, a leather mask on, and some black woman to be whipping my black ass, putting me in my proper place. You get what I'm saying?
Right.
Because they're putting on, which will get you the persona of the dominant on this planet. But the true self is always in conflict. You get what I'm saying? So they beat me in that briefcase that looks fancy. They walking around with a rubber penis. You get what I'm saying?
Right.
Just to move ahead a little bit. So this is how, if you're not, you need to be able to deal with your shadow self because it will always come in conflict. And the deeper portion, which the shadow self speaks to you in dreams.
Yes.
In dreams. That's why your dreams are personal to you. That's why I said, because I understand the language of the self, because Blue understands the language of the self, yes, we can decode your dreams, but the mere fact that you're asking for that means you're not even stepping out trying to do your own work, meaning trying to understand the language of your true self or your shadow self and how it's talking to you. Remember, I gave this example before. This ain't the new hot discovery. I've been talking about this shit. Yeah. And in matter of fact, when I was talking to Sean and he was bringing up these concepts, he said, you know something? You've always been saying this shit. Now that you said it in this context, I'm starting to say, I said, yeah, shit. Bobby's always been saying this shit. He's been doing this shit. You know what I mean? So this is actually old hat. You get what I'm saying? Yeah. What I've said to people was, is documented, if you have a dream about a baseball bat, your father may have taken you to baseball games, bought you foot-long hot dogs with sauerkraut, and you enjoyed yourself. Or your father, you may have seen your father abusing your mother or yourself with a bat. So if you dream about a bat, this is coming from the shadow. And you need to see, you need to figure out from your own shadow what it means. So if you're telling me, or Blue, ultimately, when we're decoding the dream, we're telling you from archetype energies. Well, we can say, well, the bat represents a penis, and it represents the hammer of Thor, and the Jed pillar, and the staff of Tahuti. So that's what the bat means. So, but see, that's coming from the true self and the archetype energy or the elementary ideas. What you need to be able to do to do it and why we do it is to kind of give you the idea of the language of the dream so people could maybe then start doing it to have their own discoveries. Because when you go to sleep, you shut down the ego logical process. That's why you're flying in your dreams. You're breathing underwater in your dreams, because everything you come to agree that you cannot do in your waking ego maniac conscious, you can do in the dreams. This tells you the dream and the mythology is cutting off the head of Medusa and she turning to stone. It's not real in a logical sense, but you understand it's a myth or a dream, so you agree with it. So, which means it's not a product of the ego. But once you're awake, you have to figure it out. So you need to understand the ego apparatus to do that. You don't need to, let me calm my ego down. You got to understand the apparatus and how it was filtered down. How do you? What's another way to change the ego apparatus? By starting to let yourself take control. The ego, which is weaker, has to start falling in line. I have enough book knowledge to satisfy my ego, which means the spiritual knowledge has this ego bitch is out the way. And once again, it's out the way so I could get down with the get down. You get what I'm saying? So it's not stopping the true progress that I need to make. If you don't think I say Hotep enough, that's your fucking problem, you clown. You get what I'm saying? That's not my problem. That's some shit we're going to talk about, the mask or the persona. All right. Okay. Let me see. Looking at my notes. All right. So psychology today, as we know it, deals with the shadow self. It is not, in other words, you're not going to go to a psychiatrist's office and walk out conscious. You're going to be conscious now of the things your mama and your father did to your black ass. You know what I'm saying? But you're not going to watch out conscious. So basically they're dealing with the shadow. And let me say it again if you missed out. The shadow self lays on a greater foundation, which is the true self. And anyone who's conscious is supposed to be dealing with the true self, and your shadow shit is supposed to be for your own personal affairs. So now as I look at the collective community, we're dealing with shadow issues. The cop beat him up. So now we need to do this. Come on. Let's get down to business. Out of every fucking ridiculous status message that I see, you're only saying three things over and over and over again, which are, we must save the children, the black woman is a goddess, and the black man needs to step up. That's it. You know what I'm saying? That's all you niggas is talking about. All that shit is community responsibility. It is not enlightenment. And I'm going to be as bold as to assume that you're going for enlightenment here. You get what I'm saying? Enlightenment here. So the true self is trying to speak to you. It can't get through the muckety muck, through the shadow, through the shocks. And here's another shock for you. Half you niggas still mad and even reading this shit because you're still mad at Christianity.